Hello, I'm KAshley and welcome to this series of videos around power practice. I'm the author of Word Power, Amplifying Vocabulary Instruction, and in these series of videos I'm excited to share with you some practical ways to power up vocabulary learning in context in the classroom. So this video is about how to power up or amplify vocabulary instruction with children in upper key stage 2, so children in years 5 and 6 in their final years of primary school. And the book we're going to be looking at today is by my favourite children's author, Kate DiCamillo, and it's The Miraculous Journey of Edward Tulane. You'll see a couple of things behind us, so just to make you familiar with what's here. In the back, we have the weekly top 10. So the word power approach is a contextual approach to vocabulary instruction, and the idea is that you choose and teach and apply 10 words per week in the context of what you're teaching in your curriculum. So that might be choosing 10 words from a class novel, or 10 words from a read aloud, 10 words from an experience, or something that's going to support a visitor coming into the classroom, or perhaps you're going on a trip. But the key thing about the weekly top 10 is that they need to be instructed in context, and children need the opportunity to choose and use them for a purpose after that instruction has occurred. So what we're looking at here in Miraculous Journey of Edward Tulane is perhaps we were looking at this as a novel study over a period of time, but what we're aiming to do with our weekly top 10 words is to give children the language that they could use to write a character description. So that's what we're working towards with our weekly top 10, and that's really, really key for the word power approach. What is the context in which children are going to have to choose and use these new words, apply them for reading, writing, speaking, and or listening purposes. So I'll just read you the 10 words that I've selected from Edward Tulane, and then I'll tell you a little bit about what the book is about. So the 10 words I've selected, again, which I thought would be really useful for writing a character description, but they're in the context of what we're reading: demented, inhuman, jaunty, existence, unsavory, condescending, fineness, remarkable, diligent, and mocking. Now, all of these words are actually written in the book. So they're all selected from words directly in context of the book. You don't always have to choose words directly from the book. You can choose some words from the book and some related words that you think will be useful, but the key is the context. It needs to be a very clear context for where the words have come from, why you've chosen them, and how they're going to be used. You'll also see my new power practice magnifying glasses. This is a brand new resource that I'm trialing at the minute with schools. And the idea with this resource is that children have reminders on the magnifying glasses of the different strategies that they can use to power up their understanding of words. So the power up is the phrase that I use for practicing and rehearsing and learning different aspects and features of words. There's also kind of a smaller version that you can use to create these handy magnifying glasses if you want to use them on, with groups of children where they can use them themselves once the strategies have been instructed. Okay, so Edward Tulane, this is Edward, and he is a China rabbit. He's very delicate, he's very beautiful, but he's also very conceited. And Edward only ever thinks about Edward. He is the toy, or he belongs to a little girl called Abilene, who just showers him with love and affection, and Edward just is not interested. All he cares about is himself. He doesn't love and he doesn't care. Well, what happens is Abilene goes on a journey, and in this journey, in this trip, Edward is lost, and the whole book is about his miraculous journey. That would be another great word to power up if you were looking at this in the context of the whole text. This miraculous journey of what Edward, who he meets, where he goes, what he does, and how he finds his way back to to himself and understanding a bit more about who he is. Kate is actually, as I say, my favorite author. One of the things that you could do is you could be investigating her style. So she has a very specific style, but she has books that she's written in groups. So if you like The Miraculous Journey of Edward Tulane, you'll probably also like The Tale of Disparu. Very similar, kind of, where you have these animals and creatures that shouldn't be talking. This is quite a fun one if you like graphic novels. Flora and Ulysses is kind of a superhero. It's about a squirrel who becomes a superhero. The Magician's Elephant is one that kind of stands out on its own. It's a very kind of bizarre, very, very different to the rest of her stories, but also very intriguing. Some of her earlier works, you have where she's written about animals, but the animals don't talk. It's just animals as a character, and it's about the relationships between the people. And of course, you may have heard of the series. So we have Rainy Nightingale, and then the second book is Louisiana's Way Back Home and Beverly Right Here. So Rainy, Louisa, and Beverly are three best friends, and there's a book about each, kind of describing their relationship with each other. So Kate DiCamillo, brilliant author to explore. If you didn't want to go down the author study route, kind of looking at some of her other works, there are lots of other ways that you can unlock what children already know. What can they bring to the reading of this text? What prior knowledge do they have about books, characters, settings, scenes, feelings, emotions? How can we help to bring them into the text from a place of knowledge? So one thing I was thinking is a lot of children will have seen Toy Story. So you could unlock children's prior knowledge by talking about Woody and Buzz. So they're two very, very different characters. Woody is very much, he is a bit conceited, but he's selfless and he very much cares about Andy, whereas Buzz is a slightly different character. So when children come into reading this book and they learn about Edward and what he's like, perhaps starting with a discussion there from somewhere familiar would make it a bit more meaningful for them. So that's the first step in any kind of use of this strategy, is unlocking what's already there. What's the existing knowledge, and how can we connect new word knowledge and world knowledge to the knowledge that's already there? So it's all about memory and retrieval and making words stick, building that word memory over time. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at the strategy from phonology. So in my word power approach, there are 8 strategies, and there are 8 superheroes of what I call the word power league. So each of the superheroes represents one of these strategies. So for phonology, or sounds in words, we have the phoneme phantom, and you might be able to just see her there, very tiny on the bottom of the magnifying glass. Now the phoneme phantom is great for foundation stage and key stage 1. It can help to link phonics teaching with what's happening in reading instruction, but also phoneme phantom is also about helping children to develop their fluency. So this is the very first line of The Miraculous Journey of Edward Tulane. So we have, once in a house on Egypt Street, there lived a rabbit who was made entirely of china. So what we could do here is, just focusing on this sentence, we could talk about some of the strategies for fluency. So for example, once in a house on Egypt Street, just that start, where do you emphasize? Which words do you read as a group? Once in a house on Egypt Street. And actually, can you spot that we're missing a bit of punctuation here? And does adding in the punctuation help us to chunk our reading? So once in a house on Egypt Street, there lived a rabbit who was made entirely of china. So a nice relative clause there. But what we're doing there is teaching them to read phrasally. So instead of once in a house on Egypt Street, we're tuning them into, how can I read phrases or clauses as units to make the meaning a bit clearer? So once in a house on Egypt Street, There lived a rabbit who was made entirely of china. So something nice you can do just with a simple one sentence there is get them to read with a partner, do some echo reading. So one person reads the sentence or a section of the sentence, the partner then echoes exactly and intones the same kind of up and down emphasis that the reader has selected, and then repeats it. And then read it in a different way. So what if we, in my first reading, I emphasized the words once and rabbit, but which words did you emphasize and why? So really building that discussion. Now, of course, in order to read fluently, they have to understand what they're reading. So comprehension plays a big part in that process. Okay, so that's the phoneme phantom. Some really great work there on developing children's fluency. Now, of course, phoneme phantom can also do the kind of say the word, repeat the word. So we might say, repeat after me. Jaunty, 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 jaunty. So we might repeat the word several times and they repeat after us. But phoneme phantom is much bigger than just repeating words, although that repetition and emphasis is a real important part of the process. Okay, the second strategy here is the meaning mastermind. And the meaning mastermind helps children to unlock the word meaning in context. We've got word meaning mastermind's magnifying glass there. And what we're focusing on here in this particular instance is getting children to come up with personal definitions. So we've read the text, we've explored the words, we've talked about what we think they meant, we've made some connections, perhaps thought of synonyms, words that mean the same, or antonyms, words that mean the opposite. Now, knowing what you know, what do you think this word means? So, for example, the word jaunty, it described Edward in the first chapter as being jaunty, but also full of ennui, which is quite an unusual word. It's a French word that means kind of like, I'm really, really bored. I've chosen the word jaunty because they're more likely to use the word jaunty than ennui. So jaunty is kind of cheerful, perhaps. That's the meaning of that word. But what's their personal definition? And one great way to get them to kind of keep a record is, this is my child's word notebook from our home learning to get time together during lockdown. But you know, getting them to actually map out words and write their own definitions. What is it about this word that's going to be really meaningful for you? What is it about this word that's going to help you to remember? And that personal definition is really important before we look at a dictionary definition. Okay, the next strategy is doctor derivation, and doctor derivation is my personal favorite member of the Word Power League. She looks at the history, the etymology of words. So where did words come from? Words borrowed into our language, and the history of words, their Greek and Latin origins perhaps. It's really fascinating, especially to explore with Upper Key Stage 2. Although you could explore the derivation of words with children of any age, if it's going to provide a memorable hook for them, something interesting that they're going to help them to remember the word, then go for it. So a couple of words here from Doctor Derivation. The word jaunty, we were just talking about that, and that actually derived from the French word gentille. So you might hear the sentence, elle est gentille, she's gentle. So you hear the word gentille, gentle. So jaunty, gentle, gentille, we can see how that word has shifted slightly in sound and spelling over time. Also, the word demented is an interesting one because the root word is dement. Now, we don't often say dement as a verb, but that's a word that used to be in English that's now archaic. So we don't use the word dement as often as we did. And to dement means to drive someone mad. So those are some quite interesting examples of etymology with Doctor Derivation. Okay, so finally, the last one I'd like to look at is Captain Connector. And Captain Connector is all about helping learners to make really, really strong links between words and also words across the curriculum. So not just connecting the word that we're learning to other similar words, but connecting them semantically, so how they're related in meaning, in usage, in sound, and then also connecting these to big ideas across the curriculum. So one of the things that you could do here is you could create a word web. So a simple word web is just creating a web about things that we notice about the word, things that we think we know. So in the word unsavory, we might put something in our web about not, and then we've got savor. So to savor something, we enjoy that thing. So that's unsavory. We've got a prefix, a root word, and then unsavory, like jaunty, also has an E at the end, or happy also has that E sound, or that letter Y at the end. What else can we do? We could do examples and non-examples. So what would be unsavory? So an example might be moldy bread. That's very unsavory. But we could also think about unsavory as it is in the text, as in an unsavory person. So what would an example of an unsavory person be? Perhaps a thief. Okay, so if we're looking at examples, let's look also at non-examples. So what would not be unsavory? Well, something's delicious. So a non-example would be your favorite food, perhaps. Would not be unsavory. And also, I'm trying to think of someone, the Queen. So the Queen definitely is not unsavory. So this idea of looking at examples and non-examples is from something called the Freyer model, which is a really useful way to investigate what we know about the word. But the idea with word webs is you just get children to map out what we think we know. So you could map out synonyms here, so words like distasteful or unpalatable, and also antonyms, words that mean the opposite. One final thing to mention here is this idea of Edward going on a journey, and it's always trying to think and connect what other books could we link in our curriculum that follow along this theme. Of course, we talked about a Kate DiCamillo author study, but how about doing linking in a wordless text? So these beautiful books by Erin Becker, these are two of the three. I somehow have lost the third one, which is Return in this series. But these are wordless books, which are just that. It's a journey, and it links very nicely to the journey that Edward goes on. So once they've read that, they have a little bit more background knowledge. Or likewise, you could start with the wordless book to get them into the idea of going into a journey, and then read the text. So as I say, we've done all of this, we've developed their understanding, they've learned, they've explored these words, created personal definitions. Now they're ready to choose and use these words, to charge up these words for a purpose. So we could get them to write this character description. A nice way into that is you could do something, an oracy activity where you actually get them to gossip about the character. So it might be one of the characters from the book. Get the children to work in pairs, and your job is you're the neighbor of this character, and you need to have a bit of a gossip, talk about what you think about what's going on, what they're doing, what they're saying, and then that oral rehearsal, that practice, will put them in good stead for their descriptive writing about that character. So I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Power Practice and learning a little bit more about Kate DiCamillo and some of the power-up strategies. Thank you for joining me, and take care until next time.